sister. She's been on the battlefield for many, many, many years. She doesn't look like it because she's still young and vibrant and dynamic, and she is one of the most dynamic people you'll ever meet. Multi-talented. She writes children's books, essays and articles. She has put together a justice roundtable that has had significant impact on criminal justice policy throughout the country. I think though it was a team effort, I think it's no small exaggeration to say that her dedication, working with Congresswoman Maxine Waters and others on this abomination of the 18-to-1 disparity in terms of crack cocaine and crack and powdered cocaine. Oh, I'm sorry, 100-to-1. I'm sorry, it's down to 18-to-1, which is still too much. An abomination still. But I think we have to credit her sort of steadfast work with a team of people for having won that victory. It's not a complete victory, it's not a perfect victory, it's certainly an important victory. And every time I turn around, and she's also a part of the team, and I should have mentioned this last night when they were talking about helping to exonerate the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, helping to lead that charge. She's on the phone almost daily with access to the White House, trying to get petitioning to get persons who have been incarcerated for many, many years exonerated. She's been forceful and she understands both the intricacies of the outside strategy and understands how to work on the inside as well. She, for many, many years, of course, with the American Civil Liberties Union, she has worked within COBRA for many years, but now she is the senior policy advisor for the. Oh, I'm sorry. She's. Yeah, you know, see, I'd be downplayed. She'd be rising. All right, she'd be rising. She is the advocacy director of the Foundation. Will you please welcome to moderate this session one of the most dynamic, energetic, visionary, courageous, and she's gonna get a legacy award tomorrow night, in Kichi Taifa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ron Daniels. I learned that his, shall we say, thank you very much. I'm just going to give some opening remarks and then turn it over to our framer, and then we're going to really hear from our phenomenal panel who are going to really dive deep into what they are doing. Very glad for this issue area topic on this forum this morning, beyond the war on drugs, healing Black families and Black communities. And I also want to thank the Californians Alliance for Safety and Justice for their sponsorship of this particular track. I just want to backtrack for just one moment. 22 years ago, when I was walking the halls of Congress, lobbying against the various crime bills of the day, which culminated in what I unaffectionately call the granddaddy of all the crime bills, the crime bill of 1994. Now, this bill featured the largest expansion of the death penalty in modern times, the gutting of habeas corpus, the evisceration of the exclusionary rule, the trying of 13-year-olds as adults, the gutting of Pell educational grants for prisoners, the implementation of the federal three strikes law, the refusal to address the crack powder disparity, 100,000 new cops on the street, and money centers for states to lock up more and more people for longer and longer periods of time in exchange for loads of more money. And now today, we cannot, no, we must not despair. We have been here before. We have been here before. I was here 22 years ago. What did we do before? What did we do centuries before? We struggled against oppression. We struggled against repression. 1828, Denmark VZ, 1831, Nat Turner. I mean, the list can go on and on. 1920, Marcus Garvey. 1955, Rosa Parks. I won't get into the Black Liberation Army because history is still being written. But despite the advances over the past advances, yes, the bringing down of the 100-to-1 disparity to 18-to-1, the passage of the second chance reentry legislation, you know, the smarter crime initiatives of the Obama administration, despite, quote, advances, the United States still has the highest incarceration rate in the world, with over 2 million people behind bars. The United States still has disproportionate representation and unequal treatment faced by Blacks at every single stage of the criminal justice continuum. The United States still has stops and arrests premised on racially discriminatory profiling, still has police misconduct, brutality, and murder, still has abuse of prosecutorial discretion and charging discretions, still has constitutionally questionable burdensome fees, fines, and bail, still has a skewed system of plea bargaining, lack of diversity in jury pools, harsh, rigid, lengthy minimum sentences, and still has legalized discriminatory treatment in employment, in education, housing, public benefits, and the franchise based on one's former felony status. We still have to confront the disastrous policies of the past half century. This country's mammoth experiment in mass incarceration has been an abysmal failure. Michelle Alexander for popularizing the analogy of today's system of mass incarceration with earlier systems of social control, such as Jim Crow. And just for the record, since I have the opportunity today, just for the record, decade before Michelle came out with her extraordinary book, it was none other than Deborah Small on this panel today that I credit with even coining the description of the drug war and what were happening as Jim Crow. Because I know I sat on that panel when you were dealing with Break the Chains, organizing that a decade before Michelle Alexander came out. But yes, we are talking about institutionalized second-class citizenship once one is released from prison. Yes, we are talking about disparate treatment and profiling and arrest and sentencing of this new. We may also be talking about the possible extermination, genocide of generations as well. Right. What are we going to do? We must turn our outrage into action. We have to find ways for people who do not think like us to become proximate to the problem. It is time that we, all of us here, activists, professionals, scholars, formerly incarcerated people, plain old community folk, it's time that we raise the ante and have the audacity to advance creatively strategic solutions as we have done in the past, and to fashion new systems of justice based on prevention rather than punishment, compassion rather than criminalization. We must demand of the Trump. We must demand justice, not just us. So I'm going to bring up, I'm talking about a phenomenal, fiery, someone who I met several decades ago as well. And you know, when I first heard him speak, I said, oh my goodness, who is this person? And I said, Richard Pryor's cousin? Okay, you know, nephew, whatever, you know, whatever the relation, you know, was. But just as Richard Pryor was so astute in dealing with social justice issues and dealing with it through the frame of comedy, Dr. Divine Pryor breaks it down. He dots all the I's and makes us really understand scenario and situation is all about. It was Dr. Divine Pryor, along with his phenomenal colleague, rest his soul, brother Eddie Ellis, where I first heard the issue wherein, you know, y'all got to stop talking about inmates and, you know, all like that. We are people. There is humanity here. They are the ones responsible for that shift in the narrative and just how we address and how we deal with people. So Dr. Divine Pryor is the executive director of the Center for New Leadership on Urban Solutions NYC, and he's gonna come up here and provide us with a framing just before we jump into our panel. Let's give it up for Dr. Divine Pryor.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me thank Dr. Ron Daniels and the Institute of the Black World 21st Century in this invitation. Let me thank all of the planners, everyone who had anything to do with putting this week's phenomenal conference together. I want to thank all of the panelists here who are exceptional, who are making my job so easy. Much I can be very quick and very brief so I can get out of their way. Giving me the honor of making some opening remarks. I'm gonna hope that I'm gonna stick by my script. I made myself believe that I'm gonna go by these little couple of notes that I wrote here, but most of my colleagues who know me know I'm only gonna probably go with the first line, and then I'm gonna go into the zone. And I'm only going to be in that zone for a short while because, again, we want to hear from this extraordinary panel. All of the panelists, I believe, except one, I know very personally and for a long time, and that's one too many, so I'm going to have to take care of that today. But in any event, let me say I'm honored to be here and I'm humble. My name is Dr. Divine Pryor. I am the Executive Director of the Center for New Leadership on Urban Solutions, which is the nation's first and the nation's only research, public policy, advocacy, and training center, created, developed, designed, and run from top to bottom by formerly incarcerated professionals representing every discipline from law to medicine. Our job in life is to a system that I have to start out saying is not broken. I want to frame today's discussion is to let you know that from our point of view, that there's been some faulty thinking and some faulty approaches as a result of that thinking. That for too long, we've been yelling, the system is broken, and we have to fix it. And I'm saying that the system is not broken. That this system that is destroying Black lives, this system that's destroying Black community, this system that's incarcerating Black men and now increasingly more Black women, this system that is designed, that has been attacking Black people from the inception of America is not broken, but is working exactly and specifically the way it was designed, the way that it was engineered, the way that it was conceptualized. We are at war, people. We are at war. And when you're at war, you have to first know that you're at war in order for you to develop the strategies that'll protect you from war. Broadest frame that I can bring, again, I'm only going to be before you a few moments. You know, when you go to war, you got to understand that when people war, they bring the war council together. And they have to define not only who the enemy is, because the whole purpose of war is to destroy the enemy. And you design a strategy that will allow you to go in and cause total destruction and annihilation of who you've identified as your enemy. Someone launches war, and in this case, not a conventional war. No, they weren't using missiles, and no, they weren't using AK-47. No, they were using a legal system that they have designed to cause the same effect. And I'm not going to spend too much time going back, but you should understand that we were brought here as chattel. We were brought here, we were free men, free women, and free children were taken and then brought into enslavement. It's important we understand that distinction, that we were brought into enslavement. We were not slaves. We were free men, free women, and free children. Brought us here and then reduced us to the level of chattel, meaning that we were made to be someone else's property. And as such, rights, because property can't have rights, right? This can't have a right. A speaker can't have a right because it is property. So when we reduced the property, the only rights that were bestowed were on the property owners, and they were slave owners. That means that our relationship with them has been defined in that way, master, slave, from the inception of America to today, which is my second point. We may, our expectations of white folks might be somewhat, why do I say that? Because white America has never had any other relationship with us other than master slave. Go back to the 13 colonies, go back to the beginning of America, and you tell me, has there been any time during the entire period of America where they've had a different kind of relationship with us other than the one master slave? So we expect them to treat us humane, and we expect them to treat us with dignity, and we expect them to treat us with respect, and we expect them to be fair, we expect them to be equal, but they don't have any point of reference for that. There's never been a time in America where they've had that kind of relationship with us. It's up to us now to teach them how to be dignified, how to be trustworthy, how to be honest, how to be sincere, because they don't know how. This to a whole audience of white folks. Invite me back because the truth hurts. But there were some who understood that. They say, wow, well, actually, I mean, we certainly can't call him a liar. This have to do with beyond the war on drugs. Well, I'll tell you why. Though it's true, my sister Nkechi, and she did an exceptional job talking to us about the progress that we've made, and we've made a lot. And that crime bill she discussed that was so damaging, you know, I like to name names, you know, start with people like Bill Clinton, you know, because we want to give him a pass, but he can't get a pass. You know, that bill he had put on it was disastrous. What I want to talk about in terms of beyond the war on drugs is the fact that we know that the war was not launched against drugs because drugs is a plant, right? They wasn't fighting plants. You think that they designed the law so what, they want to pull up all the plants by the roots? I mean, really? That wasn't the war. The war was against black folks, brown folks, poor folks, who they've always, it wasn't a different enemy, it was the same one. And they just came up with this whole legal apparatus to go after us. And so since the war was against us, it was against our children. It was against our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers. It was against our community. And, you know, this whole theory that they devised, you know, that they call it addition by subtraction. What do you mean addition by subtraction? Addition by subtraction, that we can increase the quality of life by decreasing those individuals' life. Meaning if we can get the bad people out of the way, if we can lock them up. So they figure that the more people they locked up, the safer the community would be. Well, we know now that's the reverse. The more people you lock up, the less safe the community is. The more people you lock up, the more mothers you lock up, the more fathers you lock up, the more nephews you lock up, the more consumers you lock up, the more people, the very fabric of society begins to unravel, and you undermine the very principles that we stand on by locking folks up. Mass incarceration does the opposite effect. Now, do I believe it's an unintended consequences? I don't. Maybe some of y'all do. Knew exactly what they were doing. And I'm not giving up any passes. Yeah, I can talk to y'all because we family, so I don't have to put any cut on it. I don't have to look around and say, is there any other folks in the room? This is all us here, you know? So we having a real conversation, right? And then so in my last 3 minutes, what I want to say is that we have some recovery work to do, because beyond the war on drugs means that the path of destruction as a result of the war on drugs is up to us. The healing. It's up to us to do the restoration. It's up to us to do the redemption. It's up to us to accept our folks who are coming back. It's up to us to get beyond this thing about the other. It's up to us to understand that the people coming home from prison are our people. These are our children, our brothers. These ain't people coming from another planet. And so when we resist them and when we come up with this whole idea that not in my backyard, this whole NIMBY thing, no, in your backyard. We're the ones that got to receive it. Who else is going to embrace them? Who else is going to love them back up? Who else is going to restore their dignity? Who else is going to rehumanize them? Who else is going to be the one to restore them? Who else but us? And if not now, when? Because we have to understand, and I'm going to give you a simple theory as I exit. I'll give you a simple one. The idea participate sometime in ostracizing folks has disastrous effects. I call it the 24-hour theory, right? It's 24 hours in a day. I don't know, let's call him Bar Kim. Bid. And in America, by the way, after you've gone through the system of jurisprudence and they've decided that you've been convicted and you warrant a sentence in prison, after you serve your time, allegedly your debt's paid in full for the punishment. But of course, that's not the case here in America. That's a whole nother presentation. But let me say that, let's say you gave Bar Kim a job and you subtract, he works for 8 hours. You subtract 8 from 24, that leaves you 16 hours, right? Takes him an hour to go to work, hour to come back. So you subtract 2 from 16, that leaves you 14 hours. He worked hard all day, so he needs all 8 hours of his sleep. So you subtract the 8 hours sleep from the 14 hours, and that only leaves you 6 hours. Just by virtue of his day, just by virtue of a job, he don't have time to do crime. It's not logically possible. When we provide our support and we give people productive avenues in order for them to be able to be reacclimated back in, we're actually doing them a favor, ourselves a favor, because now they're working, they're paying taxes, they're supporting their kids, they're contributing to the community, they become a part of our civic fabric. And so by us supporting folks coming home, we're actually doing the best thing that we could ever do. But we've been doing the reverse. Here, we don't want them here. I don't know where you're going to live, but now we've been contributing to that. So there are some things we got to do. It's interesting that I sat in a trial, and the young man was on trial. Look up at the jury, and of course, 10 of them don't look like us, and only 2 do. I'm wondering, why is this always the case? Because every time we get the jury duty notice, we do everything possible not to serve on that jury, right? But then, on the other hand, we get upset when our people don't have a jury of their peers. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't not participate and then expect folks to get the outcome they want. I'm saying it's time for us to get real, to be actively engaged in the process on every level. You go to a school board meeting, nobody there. 500 kids in the school, you got 8 parents. You know that's disgraceful. We don't go to community board meeting. We don't go to a precinct council meeting. Well, none of the things that are people making determinations on how many schools are going to be built in our communities, how they're going to change but all of these things, we're not involved. So when we're talking about the post-war on drugs, what we're really talking about is all the work we got to do to restore our communities. We're talking about all the work we got to do to heal the folks that have been broken, and that whole path of destruction, and how we got to rebuild the brick and mortar of our community, and how we have to rebuild people's humanity who've been dehumanized, who've been degraded, who have been taken from one end of the earth to the other. Now to step up and stand up. I'm going to close there because, like I said, we have a phenomenal panel. I mean, I'm excited to have my seat there and listen to my colleagues talk to you about the war on drugs. But what my instruction to them is, I want everyone who speaks at the end of your comments, I want you to talk about what solution that you're proposing. Because it's nation building time, right? It's nation time again. It's time for us to rebuild. We can talk about the problem. We know what the problem is. Most of us could probably, any one of us could be on this panel. So we want to spend this time together. How we as a collective people can begin to start blazing our own trail, our own destiny, and taking it into our own hands, because we're certainly not waiting for Trump to do it, right? I mean, we now know that we're in the biggest fight of our lives. If you was ever in a fight before, you in one now. My grandma said before she passed away in 72, she said, boy, suicide jumping out the basement window. What grandma meant, grandma said, is that when you at the bottom, there's only one direction you can go, and that's up. And so you're in the best position you could ever be in. We are in the best position we've ever been in, and so it's time for us to nation build. So let me end the way I always end, in the words of Brother Al-Haj Malik Al-Shabazz, who said that we as a people, so much for so long with so little, that we are now qualified to do anything with nothing. Shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll still be amongst the stars. Thank you so much. It's nation time again. Thank you.
Nation time. I love that. It is hard to commit suicide jumping out the basement window. Thank you. I'm going to remember that one. Let's get up again one more time for Dr. Pryor. I'm sorry. Okay, Okay, so as he said, we're going to talk about some solutions. We want to highlight the work that is actually going on our ground. So the purpose of this plenary is to provide the opportunity for our panelists to illustrate their work in the context of the theme of this session, as well as in light of the recent election. And I'm going to introduce them in the manner in which I think they're sitting here. And I'm going to let them take about 5 minutes to talk about their work, and then we're going to kind of interact back and forth, and then we're going to open it up to you all for some a Q&A. But we first have Ron Hampton, who is the former executive director of the National Black Police Association. He's the chairperson of IBW's Police Reform and Accountability Task Force out of Washington, D.C. And I must say, he's the officer that I ever met that I love. Police officer. I ain't even like, I mean, okay. Yeah. So thank you, Ron Hampton, for you know, everything that you've done and helping me look past some of my biases there. Oh gosh. No. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, we're not in the same sitting order. It's okay. Okay, we have Brandy Fisher, who is the executive director of the Alliance for Police Accountability here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I always hear about all these things coming out of Pittsburgh. So I'm really, really interested to hear just what's going on in the ground. Been very, very impressed. And now we have Deborah Peterson Small, who's the executive director of Break the Chains. And like I said, she really is the progenitor of just about any and everything that's out there in terms of analysis of the war on drugs. And if anyone has seen this recent documentary by Ava DuVernay called The 13th, it is phenomenal. I'm up here watching the documentary, and there we go, boom, Deborah Small up there, laying it out there. So you got to see that. It's online. If anybody wants the link, I can send it to you. It's, I think, Netflix, yeah. Let's see. Okay, we have my brother here, Charles Thornton. Charles just recently stepped down as the executive director, I think the first executive director of Washington, D.C.'s Office of the Returning Citizen. I think the first jurisdiction, or one of the first, to actually have a state, quote unquote, sponsored agency dealing with issues dealing with the formerly incarcerated. And I just found out that now he's a special advisor to the District of Columbia Office on Human Rights. I'm really anxious to see what is going on the ground there. So welcome, Charles Thornton. And then we have my sister, Tamika Sam, and Tamika is sitting in for Sarita Steib-Martin, who wasn't able to be here. You know, let me just say something, if I may, because you don't know who is sitting next to you. You don't know whether someone's been incarcerated, not been incarcerated. I mean, every single person that I have met who are leaders in this whole movement dealing with the formerly incarcerated, they could be anybody. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. When I met Topeka, I said, what? You just recently got out of prison? I mean, you know, when I was looking at all the phenomenal things that she's doing, she is the director of the LOAM, the Ladies of Hope Ministry. She's a special something at Columbia University. That's brought all these programs there dealing with the formerly incarcerated women. And she is here representing the National Council of Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. So welcome, Topeka. And we have Jay Jordan. He is the manager of Criminal Justice Networks, Californians for Safety and Justice out of Sacramento, California. Again, thank you so very much for the organization for sponsoring this. You know, we're talking about innovation and innovators out there. So thank you for joining our panel. And last but absolutely not least, we have Zelly Imani, who is an educator and social activist right here in Newark, New Jersey, where the theme about his nation time really originated. So I want to go on and we're going to just go down the road, if we can, for about 5 minutes. Tell us about what you're doing, work on the ground, how it's related to the theme, how it's related to the election, if you wish, and then we're going to do some interaction. Ron Hampton, you got the floor.
Thank you very much and good morning. I'm very honored to be here this morning, and I was a little worried because I thought Divine was going to give my presentation when he was talking about community. But I'm also very happy that I know this brother and have had the opportunity to work with him, and also do some presentations with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about my. I've given the honor again to serve as the chair of the IBW's Police Reform and Accountability Task Force. I hesitate when I say that word reform because I don't believe in reform. We've been reforming America's police departments for about 45 years, and they haven't reformed. And what is even more troubling is that those who work in the institution have even accepted the language of reform, because when they hear that, they know that they don't have to do anything but work around the fringe, and then we sit back and accept it. The fact of the matter is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So that leads me to my presentation. I want community control of the police. Anything less than that is unacceptable. Probably you're saying, what is community control of the police? Well, it's exactly that. But it's more than the police, it's also the other institutions in our society. Because, for example, I have a son who's 6 feet, pounds, and he's a person with autism. And people in the mental health community think that when mental health people are having issues, you call the police. Well, that's the last person you call. Because if during my time as a police officer, and even now, if they were to call the police for my son and he's standing there, all 6'5", 230 pounds going through his episode, then they're going to shoot him, because that's what they've been trained to do. So we don't call the police. And that's a strategy that in our organization in the city, our autism organization, that we work with the parents. We have a parent tree. We have a family tree that we go through. If our sons or daughters and families are having issues, then we respond to those issues. That's community control of the police. There's so much intersectionality in terms of the institutions in our society. We need to be more in control of them rather than to allow them to control them and we not be influenced at all. The other thing that happens is in education. Education should be one of them things. I can't imagine that of all the people in here, and if you have children, you've probably spent some evenings talking about how the police. We have to do that, and not just for our men, but for the women too. The fact of the matter is that in our schools, we ought to be talking about that, because if there's an institution in our community that intersects with our children, Black children and Hispanic children and children of color, is the criminal justice system. But we don't do that. We're not talking about the criminal justice system in a very real way in schools about our children. In the local elected school boards, the things that happen. In our city, we have a mayoral control. And I'm telling you, mayoral control hasn't worked in our city because it eliminated a local control school board that set the agenda for education. What does it have to do with the police? We have police in schools. So when the children act up and it's an administrative issue, they call the police and then it turns into a criminal issue. Let's not do that. So we need community control of the police and the other institutions in our society. Now, how does that work? It's where it's working now. There is in other countries. In the UK, there's a police authority. In Toronto, Canada, or across Canada, there's the Toronto Police Services Board, made up of civilians. In Australia, in New Zealand. And I'm not suggesting any one of them are perfect for us. Information about them that we can use to build our own. How would it happen? I'm not sure that there's a politician in the country, because we've seen some examples of this when we look at civilian complaint review, and I don't know of really a civilian complaint review that have the teeth, the energy, the investigative, the tools that really need to have civilian control. Is that in these bodies, that is also something that happens within the body. The police, they fire the chief of police, they develop the policies and practices as it relates to how the police will police and work in my community. How are you going to protect my community? They're also involved in firing the police chief and setting the performance goals and standards for how the police department will run. And these are civilians. Yeah, the police community will reject this straight out of hand because they don't think that civilians are smart enough policing to be able to be involved in oversight of policing. They're also involved in police officers. You can go on Board, Toronto Police Services Board, and they actually list on their website the infractions that police officers are involved in and their punishment. There's nowhere in the states, in the 18,000 police departments that we have. The other thing that we have to deal with, these unions have an awful lot of power, and they're one of the main obstacles to restructuring. And I'm not using the word reform, restructuring, because it's all right with them. These unions in the country supported, and the reason that they supported him was because that he talked about and supported stop and frisk in this country. And we all know what stop and frisk means when it comes to Black people. If we're in control, then we are the ones who set the policies and practices as it relates to what the police will do in our community, how they will do it, what they will look like. Cold thing, because I can ask each and every one of you, what do you want out of your police department? What is it that you expect of your police? What are the expectations? That's just how easy it is, and we can get that done. But it's going to take the kind of work that I'm talking about. Show up at the education meeting. We're going to have to show up to sit on the jury. We're going to have to show up for the meeting. We're going to have to show up when we didn't want to show up. We're going to have to be involved. That's what it's going to take. If we want this, we can have it, and there's going to be opposition just straight out of the front. It's going to be a great deal of opposition, because there's no country, over 18,000 of them, that really have community control over the police and what they're doing in our communities.
Thank you very much, Ron Hampton. IBW's Police Restructuring and Accountability Task Force. How about that? Okay, Brandy Fisher, Executive Director of the Alliance for Police Accountability, Pittsburgh.
To not be redundant, as you know, our organization is entitled the Alliance for Police Accountability, and you just heard a lot about that from Ron Hampton. So our organization has expanded to an organization that is dedicated to criminal justice reconstruction. And I'm not a person that is an advocate of reform either, which is why we say reconstruction. In that, we do a lot when it comes to the criminal justice system. So I'm gonna just touch a tad bit on our work when it comes to policing, because if you haven't noticed, the issue is similar across the country. And so some of the initiatives are similar within states. When Dr. Divine Pryor talked about solutions, I'm going to briefly just give a summation of a solution that I think comes from us in doing this work. I think one of our major solutions, and we hear unity often, but I don't think we embrace it nor live it out. Many of you may be academics or scholars yourselves or leaders in your own communities that are sitting out here right now. And many of you may be listening to us critiquing what we say. And that happens often, you know, within our community. And so as a solution that is broad-based, I just want to encourage us all, though we have different means to a similar end, that we embrace one another wholly, that we embrace each other's ideas, and that we offer constructive criticism to one another moving forward, you know, in this fight. Because in my lifetime right now, this is the most urgent time, I think, for us to come together. And there are so many ways and means to divide us. And so I just wanted to set that stage. And I use the example often of our bodies. The hand dare not tell the foot it is not needed, because it operates in a different fashion, because it is, we're all parts of the body are needed for the whole. As far as the name started because we advocate for individuals who are victims of police misconduct, brutality, or murder. In light of the current situation, I want to bring up a complaint that I just received 2 days ago. Recently in the city of Pittsburgh, we have made some very positive strides when it comes to policing. We had a chief who understood the problem, even though he was white. We had a chief who was white telling people that the history of policing started with slave capturing. And so that was not received well, nor the FOP in our area. Our chief recently resigned a week ago on Tuesday, and is now gone. The day after he resigned, the protesters in our area that were protesting Trump's presidency were met with smoke bombs, which has never happened. Just 2 days ago, I received a complaint from two young men, one 18, one 17, who were pulled over. And they told me that the police officers got out and said, this is Trump zone now. And we are going back to the old way of beating you all using expletive. And so, and when I first heard it, I kind of didn't believe it in the beginning until the young lady that they called when they were pulled over said she was on the phone. She heard it also, and she was so afraid that she called 911. And so there is a record of her 911 call, fear of policing. And so our work is probably about to, in the city of Pittsburgh, when it comes to advocacy and policing, but I wanted people to understand how very real that this is, because a lot of people seem to think it's idealism, or people are, fear mongering because of Trump's presidency, but it is really affecting people every day already. One of the major issues, and I would say successes that we had in the city of Pittsburgh, was decriminalizing marijuana. Marijuana was Black youth in the city of Pittsburgh, and not Black people, but Black youth were number one when it came to arrest for possession of marijuana. So the disparity was gross. And so that we decriminalized that successfully. Also, once you decriminalize something, is stay on top of it to make sure it's being enforced. And so that is one thing I wanted to bring out, because we talk a lot about policy and we do a lot of policy work, but you can get as many laws passed as you want, but if you're not staying on top of it to make sure that those laws are being enforced and that policy is actually happening, then it was just a show for the media, and it was just a moot point. So you have to stay on top of your municipalities or the state once you do actually get a law passed. So we decriminalize marijuana. We advocate for individuals. And I would say, civil lawsuits are not success, in my opinion, though some people deem that to be such. And so we have, their cases have resulted in civil lawsuits, but not one has resulted in a police officer going to jail. We have a police officer going to court right now, but the outcome has yet to come. But he was charged, and that was only because of our last chief, I believe, standing up, saying it himself that this officer needed charged and fired. Our board president just successfully had a collaboration with our authority, and they are expunging all records for juveniles up to age 24. So they can remain in housing and also apply for housing. And the last thing, very briefly, is there is currently a bill right now in the state of Pennsylvania that if our governor does not veto it by the 23rd, it becomes law. And what this bill does is it makes it a crime official to release the name of a police officer who is under investigation for the use of deadly force or force at all, if they release that name to the public. And so we are presently fighting that bill to the end. We do believe our governor is going to veto it, but he only has till Tuesday to do that. But this was slipped in right before the election. So you have to have someone that is watching these things. As we are reconstructing this criminal justice system, they are creating new laws at the same time. And so it's a very active thing that you have to do. And I just wanted to speak to that.
Thank you very much, Brandy Fisher. We're in a new day, folks. Thank you. We're going to now hear from Deborah Peterson, Small, Executive Director, Break the Chains.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Deborah Small, diaspora, and of those people who came here and chose to survive. I think it's important to acknowledge that because we're very much in a survival moment right now. I want to pick up on the themes that Nkechi started out with, talking about. I think that most of us hear it and we don't take it seriously. So I want to actually reinforce that there are historically predicates to genocidal actions. The first is a population of people who are considered to be economically superfluous or burdensome. The second predicate is their criminalization. The third, policies and practices that lead to their early death. I don't think that there's any question those predicates have been in place for Black people. And I want to just have my conversation in the frame of talking about the war on drugs. And I'm going to speak quickly because I have 5 minutes and I have a lot to say. So I want us to begin to remember why we're here in the first place. The reason that we're here in this country, the reason that we're in the Americas, is because we live in an empire that was developed based on promoting addiction for profit. To sugar, to tobacco, to alcohol. That was the basis for the American empire. That's the reason that they enslaved us here, so that we could become agents of the production of those profits that were being used to promote addiction in their own countries. Important for us when we talk about the whole concept of drug policies to think about the absurdity country that was based on, whose wealth was based on promoting addiction for profit and used us to do it. And that here we sit 300 years later, 400 years later, accepting the legitimacy of a punishment system that focuses on punishing people for their addictions. Like, really, people. I really want us to think about that, because that's the first way in which we've been enslaved and don't realize it, that we've accepted the legitimacy of that frame. And that it's been a basis for extracting people from our community for decades. It's okay. First point. My second point is that I think we really need to re-examine our relationship to punishment. That we have inherited from our experience of enslavement in this country that we don't acknowledge is the ways in which we were forced to punish each other. We were forced to beat each other, the ways that we were forced to watch each other's physical suffering and do nothing about it. Couldn't do anything about it. That to people for successive generations, and that not have an impact, an imprint on their psyche, on their behavior, on the way in which they interact. So let's be real about that. And see, I sit here now after having been 6 decades on this planet. Our shift in consciousness. When I started out as a little Black girl, Black was not beautiful. Only not in my community. It was a shift of consciousness. Accept our Blackness, our Africanness, our beauty, such that we manifest that to the world. But that was a consciousness change that happened in our community, not because white people gave it to us. As long as we believe that punishment works, continue to deliver it to us. They may give it to us in a glove, in a softer, kinder, gentler way, but they're going to continue shoving that stick up our ass. So let's be real about what we're talking about. And let's face it, it's not just about the system. It's also about how we teach each other, how we treat each other. We punish each other. It's okay to hit and beat our kids. Of course it's okay to hit and beat other people. If we think it's okay to punish our children because we think that that's the same as disciplining them, which it is not, of course they're going to accept that. And we're going to accept that as a community. So I'm a request for us to actually be engaged in the change of consciousness that will have us shift that dysfunctional relationship. Because once we no longer accept it, the system won't be able to do it to us. And then my third and final point, because I know I'm running out of time, I have to begin to envision a different economic relationship. It was predicated on the belief of private property, of individual property. And we still, again, live inside of that frame. We develop our reform efforts inside of that frame. That is not the African frame. The African frame is communal. The African frame is collective. If we will never, ever, ever country inside of a capitalist model actually begin to envision an alternative economy that's not based on us buying stuff that we don't need, that loses its value the moment we leave the store, that doesn't have us measure our worth based on how many cars and homes and clothes we own, but rather in how much we invest in each other. So I want to suggest that in the same way that Black people have been the leaders of every major social movement in this country from the beginning, that we be the leaders in developing an alternative economic model that's based on a sustainable economy, because this is the real truth. There is no product that we buy and consume and use today that cannot be made more cheaply and more efficiently by machines. That is not a sustainable economy. We have to have an economy that's based on our investing in ourselves. That's the thing machines can't do. They can't teach. They can't take care of people. They can't make art. They can't make music. They can't make drama. They cannot make us better. They cannot make our world better. Only we can do that. But that's not where we put our money. That's not where we put our resources. That's not what we lift up to the world, starting with our community. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Deborah Small. We're gonna move now to Charles Thornton, Special Advisor to the Office, DC Office of Human Rights.
Thank you, Nikichi. Good evening, good morning, everyone, good morning. This sister just took my whole, what I was gonna say, all the way to a whole nother direction. And I really look at that as a good thing. You know, I'm very humbled, first of all, to be here. This is a very humbling experience for me. And I know that it also is not by mistake. You know, I've always felt that the people that are closest to the problem, solution, right? And I'm a native Washingtonian. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I came up in Washington when it was known as the Chocolate City, when there was about 800,000 people in Washington and around 90% Black. That I grew up in, and I come from public housing. Matter of fact, I grew up in what was known as one of the most notorious public housing in DC. DC was known as the murder capital of the world. Capital, more people were being killed in DC than any other city in this country. Backdrop, you know, I achieved success as an athlete, metropolitan athlete, and went away to school in Washington State and got my first UFAC, 10 years old. UFAC, 10-year bid, right? And UFAC's supposed to be around 2 years. I turned it into 10 because I took a mentality to me. And what happened to me in prison was I saw my first murder. As an 18-year-old, I watched my first murder, and I made a decision that I was not coming out of prison in a body bag. And as a result of that, I turned a 2-year sentence into a 10-year sentence, something that I wasn't, right? And I was released back to the community, you know, with psychological problems, mental issues. You know, and the sister just spoke about that. And no one leaves from that type of environment. All right. Prison is, you know, see, people think, you know, prison is a physical thing. Something happens to you up here in prison. It happened to me, right? And I needed, you know, real serious mental health. You know, But lo and behold, this, you know, where I'm at now today is just, for me, is magnificent, right? You know, I've been the advisor, mayors in the District of Columbia. I was appointed to a cabinet position by Mayor Gray back in 2011. You know, and I started this journey as an activist. Hey, and I continue to be an activist. And I had no political aspirations, nor was I seeking any kind of government appointments. I believe that, you know, things from a local perspective. I learned a lot. You know, I found out, you know, that I'm not a stupid guy. I began to read. I began to read, right? And I began to look at some of the legislation in the District of Columbia. And what I found that there was a system that existed in place in the District of Columbia that's really a model for the country. And one of the things that the signing of the Second Chance Act, right? Because we're talking about, you know, after the war on drugs, right? I happened to be at the signing of the Second Chance Act. And when I looked on the stage, Senate building, what I saw, congressmen, you know, John Jay College of Law, all of these professionals, I did not see a previously incarcerated individual anywhere. I took that personal, right? Because I looked at all of this historic legislation that's being signed and for us. I looked in the audience, and there was not a lot of previously incarcerated people sitting in that audience. And they had the audacity, right? The pen that was used to sign the legislation, right? To a Pennsylvania, that's I forget his name, but it was from Pennsylvania that received the pen, right? And I looked at that and I said, something is wrong with this picture, right? And I began a new advocacy, you know, and what I began to do was mobilize as previously incarcerated individuals in the District of Columbia, right? And, you know, we began to create previously incarcerated groups, Returning Citizens United. We know we looked at the way that we were being referred to as previously incarcerated individuals, you know, and I had the pleasure of meeting people like, you know, the Eddie Ellises and Dr. Prize and, you know, and Dorsey Nunn and, you know, these guys became my mentors, and I took their message back to the streets of the District of Columbia. Because see, I'm a street guy. I'm the streets, and I understand the streets. And I took that message to the streets, and I used that message to elevate myself and begin to position myself, be called on in the district, you know. So I got my first appointment with Mayor Gray, and I was reappointed as mayor that's in the district right now, Mayor Bowser. And I recently, as Natishi was saying, you know, I passed the torch. That, you know, we have to come up with transition plans, you know, and it's a guy that I began to mentor on him for the last 2 years, and I passed the torch to him. Now he's the director of the office for Returning Citizens in the district. And I think, and we need to start locally, every municipality needs to have a state regulated agency responsible for, I mean, what's so hard about that? You know, here in Newark, we have mayors who are sympathizers, who are allies. It don't take a lot in the district. Let's use it. You know, the other thing I see Nikisha get ready to give me my marching orders and I'm gonna take them, you know, but we have to use our vote. I'll tell you this, you know, for this election, right, we left out the jail, there's about 80 people that voted in the district, right? And these are men and women who haven't been convicted of anything. Human right to participate in local elections, but somebody have to make that happen, and it has to be us. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles Thornton. Thank you very much. We're going to now hear from Topeka Sam, who is representing the National Council of Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Like Brother Charles here, I too had one thing I was going to say, but now switch because of the powerful panel that I have been placed on, and I'm so honored to be here with everyone today. I first want to say that Andrea James, who I'm actually sitting in space of, could not be here. She was receiving the RFK Humanitarian Award, which is a huge deal for the movement, being an incarcerated woman of color receiving that award is phenomenal. So, yeah, definitely. And she knew how important it was for us to be here in this space. So that's why I'm here, and I'm grateful to God to be here. But just to speak a little bit about myself and my level of consciousness. Before I was incarcerated, my parents are franchise owners, restaurateurs. So we lived in Manorville, Long Island, which is a small, all the way east in the island. We were the only Black family in our neighborhood. And so I didn't really have a level of consciousness. I didn't really understand what was happening in the world. And although we went to Harlem every weekend to do piano and dance and things like that, I did not know what was going on. And I went to college at Morgan State University in Baltimore. Yeah. And my eyes began to open to seeing different. When I decide to, I guess, voyage off of the campus into the city, I guess I bought in personally to what Blackness was, and ended up going to prison for a conspiracy drug charge. I was in federal prison, and at that point is when my level of consciousness and when I had awakened. Being in federal prison, specifically, of course, in a women's prison, the things that I saw in the women there, being there for 20 plus years already, I didn't understand what was going on in this world. And at which point I started talking to people and understanding that most of them came from exactly where I came from, and knew and were very educated and, went to college, had degrees. And I just did not understand what was happening in this country, at which point I started to then educate myself and talk to some of the sisters. And when I was released in May of last year, I was told to reach out to Andrea James. I had read her book when I was inside, and I was also given Michelle Alexander's book when I was inside. And so I went to my house and I requested a furlough to go to Boston to go to the Free Her Advocacy Conference, which I did. And I met in Kichi, I met Miss Deborah, I met Dorothy Spike Johnson of Mothers in Charge, I met Miss Gail Muhammad of Women Who Never Give Up. And I was just so in awe to see all the powerful Black women in this movement, not understanding what was happening before I went in, because I had dated guys who were in prison and I had visited a prison, but I never heard about women in incarceration at all. So looking at that conference, I understood exactly where I needed to be, and that's when my advocacy started last year. And so formed and, about Romans 12:1, about renewing of our minds. And that's what happened to me when I was incarcerated. So Reverend Dr. Moody Shepherd from New York Theological Seminary, she pulled me to visit me as a mentor while I was inside. And when I came home, that's where I had a space to be. I was there, and they helped me into starting my ministry, the Ladies of Hope Ministries, to give women spiritual development and empowerment, and to allow women to know that that experience is just an experience outside of every other experience that you have in your life, and to utilize that experience to empower yourself to take back your life. So in doing that, and sitting with Andrea, she had thought of the brilliant idea for formerly incarcerated women to come together to start a national movement. And so as a founding member of the National Council for formerly incarcerated women and girls, we unapologetically advocate on behalf of women and girls. Why? One, because there's no one else really doing it. Two, because when you think about genocide and you think about people and you think about the fact that we have so many brothers in prison, you think about the sisters that are also in prison in the carceral state who are home. And who are home, the mothers, the daughters, the sisters who are there supporting the brothers inside. And then what happened was, with the war on drugs, those conspiracy laws end up putting the women in prison. So therefore, there was no support for the brothers. There are no support for the sisters. And then our community is just dismantled, right? I guess to answer Dr. Pryor's question on what the solution is, the solution for us is to end incarceration of women and girls, period. That's it. Lastly, I just want to say that right now we are fighting for clemency specifically for women in federal prison, because if they do not receive clemency, they will die in prison. Out of the 944 clemency recipients that President Obama has released, only 63 have been women. Only 63. So we are advocating, we are pushing policy, and we are out there. We ask that you go on to the change.org websites, on to candoclemency.com, on to the council.us, and sign these petitions, because we need to bring our sisters home. Thank you.
Thank you, Topeka. I just want to add that the award that Andrea James received yesterday, along with Glenn Martin, a formerly incarcerated person as well, was historic. And I'm saying it was historic because this is an award that's given to people all over the world. And United States, there have only been two or three other awardees from the United States.
Yes.
So for this award to be given to two formerly incarcerated people, I mean, I'm just telling you, that was phenomenal. I mean, I just wanted to say that. So thank you very much, Topeka. And I know that Andrea really wanted to be here, yes. So I'm really glad that she sent such a Okay, so we're going to hear now from Jay Jordan, who is the manager of Criminal Justice Networks, Californians for Safety and Justice, Sacramento, California.
Najama Sabui. Assalamu alaikum and good morning.
Good morning.
The great philosophical of our time, Tupac Shakur, said that the irony of America, he spoke about the irony of America, the irony of America that, you know, the color red, white, and blue represents freedom until they're flashing behind you. You know, I hail from Stockton, California, and as a Californian, I have to apologize. I gave you the ungodly technological advances of Facebook and Twitter and social media, exported something sinister and demonic. It was California, Reagan, and Nixon that brought us the war on drugs and the war on crime. State legislature that wrote over 1,000 tough on crime bills. California voters that exported 3 strikes. It's, you know, this country was built on shared values. Society, institutions, built on shared values, and the shared value that legitimizes the existence of our criminal justice system in redemption. I totally agree when you say that this system is working. Keep us safe and not to redeem us. So if that's the concept, its existence, explore that for 5 minutes, if that's okay. I come from Stockton, California, and you know, Stockton was one of the first cities to declare bankruptcy. We were ground zero for what has now been dubbed the Great Recession. First to our housing bubble to collapse, rising crime rates. Result, you know, 92% of the homicide victims in California, in Stockton, were boys and men of color. We had a dismal high school dropout rate, horrible political situation. Imagine there were a lot of the same instances of trauma and crime in Stockton than there was in Chicago and Detroit and Newark and I want to talk about someone that's close to me, and on Facebook, so I won't mention any names. This individual, let's call him John, he began to get molested. From 8 to 12, he was sexually assaulted by someone in his family. DPS. While in this protective, sexually molested, okay, became truant in juvenile detention. While in juvenile detention, he got with some guys who looked like him, talked like him. And he got out, and while in that gang, he was beat several times, he was shot at. At the age of 16. And gave him 200 years in prison. 16. 200 years. Luckily, he had an appeal, and 15 years later, he's out. He got out with no resources, with no help, suffered because he committed a crime. How did the system make us safe? If the fundamental shared value that legitimizes the existence of the criminal justice system is safety and redemption, then it has completely failed us. And yet, we are all complicit because we pay taxes. Every time you put money in your car, every time you buy milk, you buy cookies, you buy cigarettes, you buy alcohol, you buy diapers, you are paying taxes to this system that systematically oppresses our people. This question of how this system was created. I mean, you know, when it says when that crime bill was of 94 was passed, it wasn't just passed by Republicans. It was championed by a Democrat and voted on by black folk. That's right. That's right. And it was because this fundamental shared value of you all want to be safe. They were speaking on behalf of crime survivors, of victims. Injustice, we begin to peel back the onion. See, who are these crime survivors? Because what we were seeing on TV did not look like us. And we realized the majority of crime survivors, of victims, come from the same families, the same households, the same neighborhoods, the same communities that are affected by the devastating system of mass incarceration, and yet they get no resources because their communities of color. Building a system, reimagining a system where it protects us, we feel safe. Yes, it's communal. Only 15% of victims are given assistance. Only 15% of victims are given assistance. 15%, 15 out of 100 people who get a crime committed to them get some numbers, and I want to talk briefly about the solutions. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. All right, so in America, there are 1 million black men incarcerated. In America, there are 20 to 30 million black people that have a felony conviction. They have a criminal conviction. Are people from voting, getting jobs, permanent conviction, permanently disenfranchising people. In California, there are over 4,800 restrictions on people that have a criminal conviction, barring them from jobs, housing, education, and more. Lifetime bans. In California, some solutions, right? We passed, in 2014, we passed Proposition 47. It did 3 historic things. Let me get out of here. It was the first time California voters actually changed the penal code. Low-level offenses and changed them to misdemeanors. There are felonies, we changed them to misdemeanors. It was the second thing, it was the first time California voters actually made it infinitely retroactive, meaning no matter how long ago you had these criminal convictions, you can find relief. Which is the most important thing, the economic piece to it. It reinvested that money back into communities in financial literacy, in job creation, in mental health and substance abuse, in trauma-informed care. And it saves the state $68 million a year. $68 million. These are fundamental incremental changes that we can make. And that's just the first change. We passed 57, we passed we legalized marijuana. We stopped a juvenile direct file. There's so many reforms that are going on, and I'm here to tell you that just because this orange man is across the water does not mean that this can't continue. There's a lot of fears in our community that Trump is going to hinder the criminal justice reform movement. And I'm here to tell you, we are here, and we are here to stay. We are not going to stop fighting. We need every single person in this audience to do the same. Thank you.
All right, my father. Thank you. So now we're going to hear from Amiri, educator and social justice activist, Newark, New Jersey. Bring it on home for this.
Black love, everybody.
All right.
So far, isn't it? It's a powerful panel. This panel, I heard a lot of talk about reimagining what justice looks like, reimagining what the world looks like, reimagining what our economy looks like. Sometimes it's not about reimagining. Sometimes I like to imagine ancestors imagining what freedom looked like. The enslaved African living in the shack, freedom to look like living in the projects. The free men in the North that were stopped and asked to see their free papers. Did they imagine freedom to look like stopped and frisked and asked to see for their ID as well? Imagine the enslaved African who got 39 lashes to the back for trying to read. Did they imagine freedom to look like only 5% of students enrolled in college campuses? If they imagine something greater, something more free, here right now in this country is not freedom. We can do to our ancestors to keep pushing their freedom, actualize what they imagine what freedom looked like. We observe the anniversary of something that was traumatic history. It woke us up to police violence. It was a young Black man that was being savagely and brutally, viciously beaten by police officers. Beyond recognition, somebody was videotaping it, right? Somebody videotaped it and pushed it out to the press, playing this imagery and this video footage over and over and over again. And the discussion across America was about police reform, about police brutality, and how these things must change. Because we all thought like, finally we got some footage about police brutality, and people will honestly now start to work on these problems in our communities. They believe us now. I'm trying to think about who am I talking about. Like, he said someone got beat. It's not Mike Brown because Mike Brown got shot and killed. It's not Sandra Bland because he said it was a man. What I'm talking about is Rodney King. And that was 25 years ago. And we're still having these same conversations about police reform and about police brutality. It's actually going to change, and it's going to be taking the people from this panel and the people in the audience to develop real solutions to move us forward past this narrow police reform. 2015, y'all, 991 people were shot and killed by police officers. And there was 0 convictions. In 2014, there was 0 convictions as well. Instead of justice, though, they gave gas. Instead of answers, they would give us rubber bullets. Often right now, that it's easier for a football player did for protesting against police violence than the actual police officer who committed police violence. We see protesters more likely to be arrested for protesting than the actual police officer that they're protesting against. Living in. But this is nothing new. As mentioned before, the state was never created to protect Black bodies. Created to exploit Black bodies and for their being here in America. And when we have these solutions, it's not about reforming the state, but we have to have these conversations about abolishing the state. Abolishing police, abolishing prisons. Because when we think about it, institutions, they punish Black bodies, right? The prisons punish Black bodies. The police punish Black bodies. And the one institution that we actually got abolished for punishing Black bodies was the slavery institution. So why can we not abolish all institutions that are punishing Black bodies? Anti-Blackness, not just here in New Jersey, not just here in the nation, but all across the world. All across the world. And anti-Blackness is an interlocking system of practices, policies, behaviors, and institutions that work to dehumanize Black people, oppress Black people for the benefit of non-Black people, specifically for white people. Benefit from our oppression. They benefit from our dehumanization. That's why they can never say Black Lives Matter. They do not recognize our humanity. So right now, let me hear everyone say Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. And we're going to continue to create institutions, our own institutions, actualize and affirm Black humanity. So we have to start to dismantling these policies and these institutions that dehumanize Black people. I'm not really completely interested in community control of the police because I'm not interested of controlling institutions that will still Black people. I'm not interested in that. It's not a crime. Being poor is not a crime. And that's what we're doing here in America, right? That the solution to crime in America is always about hiring more police officers. That's not the solution. You fight crime not by hiring more police officers, but by fighting poverty. By fighting poverty. The safest communities in our nation don't have more police officers. They have more money. They have more resources. Their members have better jobs. They have better schools. So we need to start defunding the police, and putting that money into our communities. That is one of the solutions. That's the solution. Stop giving money to the police officers and put it into recreation. Put it into our failing schools, because failing schools equals successful prisons. That's what it means. Failing schools equals successful prisons. And those are the things we need to start to abolish here in this country and all across this world. It has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population. This is not land of the free. That is not land of the free. If we incarcerate our people, incarcerate our poor.
All right, you brought it on. Thank you. Let's give all of our panel a huge hand. I'm going to lay out one question, and then I'm going to take the questions from the audience. We're not going to go, you have these cards. So whoever the official person is that's bringing up the card, the official person should go on and do that. So we have talked this morning. We've talked about community control and restructuring of the police. We've talked about embracing each other's issues and have the change happen within us and envisioning an alternative economy. We've talked about having previous incarcerated people essentially at the table. We've talked about it's never too late to start advocacy to take back your life. We've talked about clemency for the unjustly incarcerated. We've talked about not being complicit with our own oppression, imagining justice from the perspective of our ancestors, keep pushing for freedom and abolishing institutions that violate Black bodies. What I want to kind of ask, and this is not for everybody, just for maybe 2 people, 2 or 3, you know, whoever wants to answer. In this, we find ourselves in, I mean, we're in an environment now where in just a week, terms that you couldn't even barely whisper before in mixed audiences. Everybody's talking about now: genocide, white supremacy. I mean, you know, these were terms that, you know, we Institute of the Black World at these conferences, et cetera, you know, but you hear people, shall we say, raising up issues and frames of analysis that we've been talking about for decades. So with this whole paradigm of genocide, this whole paradigm of race, of white supremacy that we find ourselves in, with this new quote unquote law and order president, how do we effectuate these solutions? How can we gain community control? And how, I mean, you know, they are operating with, there's not going to be a Justice Department to do a pattern and practice of, you know, discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. So just for one or two or three of you all, just find ourselves in. Somebody wants to tackle that one.
I'll take it. Yeah. So again, you know, a criminal justice restructuring or reform, however you want to call it, is a state issue. So, although when you look at happened in the 80s and 90s with tough on crime, you hear a dangerous rhetoric that has begun to surface. That was the war on drugs, right, and the war on crime, right, super predators, and now the most interesting thing that us, you know, CJ reformists is this new narrative of the war on gangs. Dangerous rhetoric. This is a false dichotomy of the deserving and undeserving. And I always talk about like this shared value of safety, because that can be used to instill fear in the white electorate, but the Black electorate as well. If you look at a lot of who voted for the tough on crime bills, who voted for three strikes, that was largely the Black electorate as well. So I think that we need to look at like fortifying ourselves in terms of the narrative. The narrative shift. Terms like formerly incarcerated, mass incarceration, those terms did not exist. Now they do exist. I think we need to protect that and protect it vigorously, and also to understand that you do have power. Like the brother said, what did our ancestors look like? Same question, like what kind of ancestor do you want to be? You know, this is about community, and everyone can go home right now, in a rock's distance, find someone that's been formerly incarcerated. Right? How do we respond to a Trump presidency? Aggressively loving one another, loving folks who are coming home. And not only that, right? The sister was talking before the panel. It's important to understand that people who are incarcerated just don't harm themselves, they harm their families as well. So you have people out, women who are out there in these communities with men that are incarcerated that need help. That's something tangible that everyone in this audience can do, is reach out to families of incarcerated individuals and offer support, psychological support, economical support, mental support. That's what is needed in this time.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We have 2 more to respond to that, and then we're going to open it up with the cards, wonderful cards that I have. So I'm going to call on Charles Stewart and then Deborah Small to close out this portion. Charles.
Yes, you know, yeah, I like all the references to the and the, you know, I'm looking at the landscape that we're in now, you know, and I'm weighing all that against the you know, what has happened reform to this point. You know, I got into this work in 1990, and my thing, and it always will be, you know, we don't have a choice but to keep pushing, right? We have to keep pushing. You know, and the way you do it is in the streets, you know, grassroots, you know, and as he was saying, locally, you know, my position has always been raising previously incarcerated up to these platforms. All right, I just passed the torch in Washington, D.C. as to another previously incarcerated, but I also leveraged the position that I was in, and now I'm getting ready to be appointed as the chair of the Corrections Information Council, right? What is that? You know, for all y'all who don't know, that is the agency that monitors the condition of confinement of district residents going into the institutions. How are we treating these residents? And this is the things that we got to look at in your local communities. Do you have a CIC? Why not? All right. Do you have an agency that's responsible? Why not?
Some community questions. Great.
Go ahead there.
Deborah, brief, because I want to get to these wonderful questions.
So I've been to places recently in the middle of genocide in the Black Pacific coast of Colombia, where Black people have been driven out of their communities, land that they owned under the umbrella of the drug war through a combination of domestic warfare and defoliation. This summer, I spent 2 weeks in Brazil meeting with Black activists who are also living in a state of actual genocide, where police violence is the second leading cause of death for Black men in a year. And these are Black police killing Black people. Like, we have this abstract conversation, and I really want us to make it real, because I've been traveling to the countries where Black people are being killed right now under the umbrella of the drug war. And if you think that we don't live in a country of people who are capable of engaging in that same kind of activity, history. So I actually want to be in a conversation about how do we help people to survive who've lost their housing and food stamps? How do we actually keep people safe when the police are not there to do that for us anymore? How do we organize when we can be surveyed online, everything that we do? It's like, this is really a different space that we're in, and it's an urgent space, and we are the vanguard. And the last thing I want to say around solutions is this: organized by providing for people's needs. They organized by being in the community and providing breakfast for kids who needed it, walking old ladies back and forth home to make sure that they were safe. They got famous around the guns, but they got community support because of the services that they provided and the education that they did. Okay, and if we started doing that, organize our communities.
Thank you. This is how we're going to proceed. I want all of my panelists, hopefully pass down a piece of paper, to take out a pen and paper. Yes. Because the way we're going to do this, because I really believe in hearing from what the community wants to hear about as well. So I want to read off the questions that I have here, and I want you to jot down what you want to respond to. And then we're going to close with each one of you all determining what from this thing. Now, we have a whole session tomorrow, folks. We have a whole session of a track on criminal justice. So I'm going to have these cards there as well. We have a whole new set of experts as well who will be addressing this. So all of this will be to make this work. Okay, so take your pen and pencil. You jot down the one that you want to. Cool. Where the USA Today is reporting that a state legislature in Washington State is introducing a bill to criminalize protesting against Trump as a felony in calling it economic terrorism. And the ACLU and other groups are protesting that, so that's one. What can we do to counter the awesome power of the fraternal order of police? Prisoners need to communicate with family and others. What can be done about the high cost of phone calls, prison phone calls? You get to go to a Black historic college and you weren't really around Blacks. I'm not sure which, okay, I'm just reading. Who is that? I don't know. Okay. Okay. If you are dependent, if you are dependent on resources from outside neighborhoods, how do you build an independent movement for reform? If you are dependent on resources from outside neighborhoods, how do you build an independent movement for reform? If prisoners are dehumanizing and we should do away with them, if prisons are dehumanizing and we should do away with them, with people who do not respect the laws of society. Can we agree to have the format of the State of the Black World Conference travel from state to state monthly, educating and empowering our people, funded by our people, while simultaneously withdrawing our monies from their society as much as possible? Get radical. With the talent in this room, can we develop a process, a protocol to vet those returning to our communities so there is a matchup focusing on housing, homes of the elderly, single parent homes, those leaving foster care, etc. The Reverend Dr. Ron Daniels, should we all be charged with the task mission to take whatever this state of the world message back to our communities through meetings, gatherings, no matter how big or small? Does not use of the N word to refer to each other lead to a perpetuation of the idea that we don't deserve respect? To something for federal government is withholding income tax. Johnny Cochran, it says, a capitalistic system of education, criminal behavior, Eurocentral curriculum, the theft of services, public schools. I'm looking for the question, but thank you, Dr. Anna Maria Thomas. Maybe you can. What steps can we take to call for all trials involving police brutality or police shootings to go to a full jury trial? Okay. Familiar or knowledgeable of moratorium or manumission, Sankofa, go back. Whatever. Now, records, what does organize and mobilize mean? I'm coming down to the wire. Address victims of crime by Black people, okay? I'm sorry. There's talk of drugs and alcohol in the Black community to quell Black youth consciousness. How can we keep our youth away from drugs? Are we building, creating jobs, housing for returning warriors? Do we have a Black resource directory? Analysts champion legalizing a drug, marijuana. I feel we should not promote drug use and drug abuse. That does not work for the uplifting of our people. We should be against drug use. Bucks, St. Thomas, Barbados, attorney. Oh, someone gave their contact information. Okay, great, thank you. I hope you wrote down what you want to respond to. I'm gonna give each of you all an opportunity, and we will have a whole session tomorrow. Give yourselves a big hand for it.
Oh, yeah, I'll go first.
Yeah, you don't have to go in order.
I'm gonna go first because it's hard for me to remember all of those questions. But something did stick out in my mind, and I'm gonna just touch on it just a little bit, and that was the question around mobilizing and organizing. And we're mobilizing right now. The organization is bringing a group of people together, and we're doing that. And now, in terms of the organizing, I think we need to be strategic, and we do not have to reinvent the wheel. What Deborah was saying, they are models, the Panther model, they are models that we know work. Ways that we could begin to implement those models. What we have to stop doing is putting our hand out to finance what we can finance our own self. You know, we don't need the assistance, you know, and I know I need to pass it, but, you know, when we start getting all that assistance and having it dilutes what we can do ourselves.
Thank you, Charles. Who's next?
How to counter the police union movement and the policing. Some of those models that I talked about earlier don't have that issue. They don't have that problem because the community is involved in that process. The union movement in policing is no close to the traditional union movement in this country when it dealt with human rights and civil rights. That is not what the police union is about. And how you counter it is that the citizens who the police sums up the system in terms of how it works. You said the police with the consent of the people. But what has happened in our country is that we haven't asserted our consent. That's right. Our consent. So we had to take control of it. I agree with the brother, tell you the truth. I think we ought to abolish the police in our cities and communities. I agree with you 100%. But I also agree, and Dr. Pryor and I talked about this, you have to have something because there are individuals walking around in our communities who are doing things to our people, and we need to straighten that up. We can't let them do the things that they've been doing. So yeah, let's abolish the police. As a matter of fact, Reverend Dr. Willie Wilson in Washington has put together a movement that recruiting and organizing men to work in the communities and the schools to get the police and the police out of the schools and out of our communities. So no, I'm 100% with you. Let's abolish them. But that don't relieve us of the responsibility of the safety of our community. So we the ones have to step up. We have to step up and organize and be serious about it. And that's what we've been doing. So there are examples out there, very effective examples of what it is that we need to be doing and how we can do it.
I'm gonna briefly be a little out of order. No, I didn't know about the Washington State thing that's going on in the USA Today. How to counter the FOP, I would say to organize other unions, to isolate them. That's what we're doing back home. Because this is a union that is not like no other, that's like no other union, as Ron Hampton just said. And I think if you organize other unions who are willing to stand up against the FOP, that's the way to reach some success. And why legalize marijuana? I don't know if that question was directed to us, but we didn't legalize marijuana, we decriminalized it, which would stop youth from going to jail for possessing it when they are enforcing it disproportionately on Black people.
So I'll be very quick and say,
I want to end with you, Deborah, if that's okay. I want everybody else get a chance to respond and one just respond. Okay.
Well, one, I wanted to talk about also the criminalization of protesting in Washington State. No, we were unaware of that as well, but we are going to Seattle, Washington in 2 weeks. And that was part of the plan. To go out there protesting about the election and bringing awareness. So thank you for that information, but we're gonna still do what we have to do. Right. That's one. And two, I would assume the question was for me about the Black Historical College and not being around Black people. I didn't say that. What I said was that when I went to Historical College is when I got awakened and when I started understanding more about my culture and what was happening in the community. That's it.
So many questions to answer. So three points. You got to understand this. I'm gonna say it again. This false dichotomy of the deserving and undeserving. People who commit crimes are fundamentally bad people, inherently bad people, and that's not the case. It's conditions. Right? Crime is a result, it's a symptom, it's a result, it's not the cause. We need to realize that, right? So when we talk about where crime comes from, we're talking about trauma. pass memorials every single day. Their nephews and their uncles and their fathers and their brothers get locked up, get shot. I'm not gonna get into the trauma brain and get on my soapbox, but that creates a trauma brain. Traumatized individuals who act out in act of desperation. We have mental health facilities, you know, in our communities. We don't have addiction treatment facilities in our communities, right? So people, we have criminalized addiction. We have criminalized mental health. We've criminalized people stealing stuff. I don't know anybody with an $80,000 a year job going out stealing cars. It's this system that responds to when people commit crimes and not before they commit them. We know where the high risk populations are. So if we prevent crime from happening, we wouldn't need a criminal justice system, right? So when we talk about this dichotomy of how do we deal with people who commit crimes, you know, how do we gauge them when they get out? I mean, it's important that we understand that prevention before people commit crimes is the most important thing that we need to be doing.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes.
Real quick. One of the things that we also want to talk about is job creation, right? That these people are committing crimes because they're unemployed. They get trapped up in the system, get labeled a felon, and they definitely can't find a job afterwards. So how can we as a community, when we talk about organizing and mobilizing, because we always try to mobilize around the Black dollar, right? We try to mobilize and tell people not to shop on Black Friday, but how can we organize our Black dollar? And here's one quick solution. We can create a card that we partner with local Black businesses. And every time you use that card, you shop, $1 goes into this community bucket. After we get like $10,000, the community comes forth, issues some proposals about what type of businesses they want in our community. And then they vote on the best business that they want in the community, and they fund it using the money that they invested themselves to get this business in their community. And what this does is creating more jobs for us that we want to see in our community. We don't need no more liquor stores. We don't need no more chicken shacks, right? These are type of proposals that we need to do in our communities. And that's one idea.
Thank you very much. Okay, Deborah, just bring it home.
I love you all, but I really want you to hear something. I want you to listen to me around this. In the early 1940s, the Germans made a film, a propaganda film about the Jewish community. It showed people living in conditions of poverty, who stole, begged, people who committed crimes, people who were dirty. They used that film to justify the criminalization and exclusion of those people. When Americans see that film today, they don't see those Jews as criminals. They don't see them as people who were humanly inferior. They see them as the victims of the crime of Nazism and fascism. We still have a conversation about our people that they're criminals. Right. And we don't talk about the bigger crime, the people who engage in predatory financial practices that extract from everyone, the people who set up an economic structure that requires the marginalization of people. So if you don't remember anything I said today, I want you to remember this, because we call ourselves the Institute for the Black World 21st Century. Middle class is a 20th century term. First century, there are only two classes of people. They're the class of people who work for money and the class of people whose money works for them. If you work for money, it does not matter how much money you earn, whether it's 20,000 or 200,000. When your source of income is gone, you are screwed. You have enough money that your money works for you, like the man who's about to enter the White House. Everything in this system is designed for you to keep that money, for it to grow, and for it to be protected. We have always been no more to them than this glass, something to be used up until it's broken and then discarded and replaced. That is the whole purpose for which we came here. And when we are no longer useful, we will be discarded. We stand for each other, and that doesn't mean just for those of us who are educated, respectable, and speak well. If we're not willing to stand for the quote-unquote criminal, for the guy who's quote-unquote predatory in the community, I guarantee you that they'll be putting that label on your grandson next. and nobody will be standing up for him.
Let's give a big hand for our panel. Let's give a big hand for Dr. Pryor. And before I bring Dr. Daniels up, I just want to say we have less than 60 days, people. 60 days till January 20th, when the White House is going to change hands. There are things that can be done within this 60 days. There are things that President Obama can do right now that cannot be overturned by Congress, cannot be overturned by a court. He can do right now. The power is in his hand. It came up a little bit today. It's the issue of clemency. Presidential power. He needs to exonerate the right, excellent, honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. He can do that. He can grant a posthumous pardon to Marcus Garvey. Go bolder on the clemencies that he has granted. He's granted 944, I think, to date. Some more might be coming out. Come on, right? That's what I was about to get to. There are scores of people languishing in prison right now as a result of the war of COINTELPRO that was waged against, and it's still being waged against our people. People such as Mutulu Shuakur, languishing in a federal prison. Leonard Peltier, I don't know how many times his petition has been denied. Obama can only deal with those who are in the federal system. Veronza Bowers. I mean, there are people that with the stroke of a pen, he can free and he can release. Incarcerated by the state. That would be the state of Pennsylvania. See, you got to understand the distinction in terms of federal and state. But he can call upon the governor to release Mumia Abu-Jamal. He can, well, Asada was a state prisoner as well. But I mean, there are things that he can do now. Right now, he's focusing on drug offenses. And he's focusing on that because people have been unjustly incarcerated. People are sitting in jail today where the laws have changed. They said that the laws were unfair, that the laws were unjust, yet they're still languishing in prison. He can take whole classes of people, like people who were subject to the crack cocaine disparity that did not get out because the law was not retroactive. He can commute those sentences. He can look at everyone who was convicted of drug conspiracy, where you did not have an actual a specific actual charge, a specific act. He can commute those sentences. Women, he can take the class of people who are women and commute those, elders, people who are languishing in prison, who are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. All the statistics state that people age out of, if you want to even use the term criminality. There's no threat to public safety. So I mean, I'm just saying, there are things that he can do right now that he must do, and we need to be about advocating, and these 60 or so days we have left for him to do so. I'd like to call Dr. Ron Daniels, I know he's up to give us whatever our closing charge. I do want to say, come back to this track tomorrow. This is not solutions that the Institute of the Black World is, these are solutions that you are giving to IBW, that you are going to be working to fulfill. Again, let's give our panel another big hand. Let's bring up Dr. Ron Daniels.
And let's give it up for the best moderator I know anywhere. It's Kiki Taifa. Yeah, sister. It gets gooder and gooder. And I think one of the things that we stress, and I'll be talking about that tonight, is what we do in IBW. Cultivating a culture of collaboration, to heal Black families and communities. In other words, we are facilitators. We try to bring people together because our best resources, we are our best resource. Right. Learning from each other is our best resource. And sometimes it's hard to project that concept. One of the persons who was trying to market what we do, and they said, what do you, it's unless you're here to feel it, and it's hard to project what we do. But it's about that collaboration, and a culture is a very specific term. When it's cultural, it's embedded. You do it because you know that's one of the ways that we survive, thrive, and ultimately we move forward. We want to do a couple of things before we close, and this has been an incredible panel. We have much more to come. The economic panel is coming after lunch. Say, if you open your book, we have the Chakula cafeteria, which you can go to, and they have, yes, those who went yesterday know we had some great meals for a low cost, so you'll be able to get that. It's in your open your book and it will tell you. I think it's right on this floor. You go right around the corner. I think it's on the same level today, but we'll have volunteers out there, Sister Ifia and others, to make sure we can direct people to the Chakula. But it's a great low cost thing, and that way you're right here. You don't have to go any further. I want to do 2 or 3 things. I want to be able to invite, if she's willing to come and share a couple of words with us, our distinguished Consul General from South Africa, if she would come to the podium, and someone can escort her to make sure she gets to the stage just for a few remarks. At this time, Matula, she can correct me if I'm in wrong. Let's give a warm round of applause. Let me just say that some of you will recall that the other evening we have Legacy Awards, and tomorrow evening, those of you who come to the Legacy Award ceremony will know that we have several recipients on the stage. Sister Nkechi Taifa, Legacy Award. Yes. Ron Hampton, Legacy Award. Peterson, small to get one, do you? Out in the audience, I think I saw Sister Adjua Ayatoro is here, right? She's here somewhere, right? So anyway, we will have these Legacy Awards. But the other evening, I'd be here, we presented a Legacy Award to none other than Hugh Masekela. And South African Tourism was here to receive it, and I understand that they've already projected that out on their website, and that it's being seen, right? And it's being well received. And so we wanted to, the Consul General could not be here the other evening, but we'd like her to come now and share a few remarks with. So please welcome her warmly.
I feel a little bit intimidated after those very powerful ideas that have been shared with us, but I would like to come, I wanted to come up and just greet you, bring you greetings from the very last country on the African continent to be liberated from colonialism. At the bottom of the African continent. I'm fascinated by what's happening in the United States right now. Late 1800s and the early 1900s, people, particularly in my country, to study in the United States, because we're not allowed to do that back home, came Pixley Seme, Columbia University. And he went back to South Africa and started what became the African National Congress. And that is the main political party that to us. Now we looked up to yourselves. Days. African Americans, together with fellow Africans from other countries, helped us to get to. The part I want to get to is 1994, we were celebrated. We did it. Forward to 2016, and we have a reason to stand back and say, hang on a minute. Now, I'm a diplomat. I have been sent by my government to represent them to your government, so there's a limit to what I can say. Mm-hmm. We people know what's happening on a day-to-day basis on the African continent. But generally speaking, I have found that here in the United States, I have to go on the internet to know what's going on the African continent. So I know that not many people will know what I'm talking about, but had hopes. We were the last country to be liberated. We were the country that had not been destroyed by wars and Africa was looking at us, what we were going to do. They were looking to us to an extent as well, the torch. We stand now to see or to examine how the deck was stacked. So Deborah Small said a lot of things that were on my mind. I'm singling her out not because she was the best speaker, but she touched on things that I thought, that's it. He or she who owns the economy calls the shots.
Right.
Cannot say it better than that. But there's something else she said, and I know she didn't quite mean it the way I understood it, but when we examine things, one of the things that we've realized is use this memory. People say that you carry the memory of your suffering through the generations, and we children with us. That memory just lives on, and the parallels, believe it or not, between yourselves, it fascinates me. Between yourselves and what you experience and ourselves are amazing. You know the similarities. Liberated ourselves, but we had no revolution. And therefore, the system remained exactly the way it was. So the parallels start there. We did not want to the safer way. We do not blame our leaders then. There are many factors that got us there. The same way that you have your own history, people will take you up to a point, and then new people have to come in and take you further. Okay. Now, coming back as I close to the issue of memory. Now, the other side of the memory is, Deborah spoke about rephrase, but you exist within a system, African or a person of African descent, memory. What is in our memory, our societies were shaped and organized. Looking at the economic situation, our struggle right now is of the economic nature. How do we get ourselves out from under this that still presses us down? We're realizing now that actually it ain't gonna happen. Actually, there was never any intention to get to give us the economy. And that is the big pull that we have. And I'm saying this just to give you that other perspective. So we look at it and then we say, we will never actually win. Something we do not understand. This is something that does not live within us. The way our society is shaped is, I'm not African person wants to be the rich person that has $96 billion while everybody else is suffering. It's just not in us. Right. When you talk about generational wealth, the way it's shaped in the Western world doesn't make sense to us. And therefore, even when our government gives us the opportunities, there are some things that just don't come naturally. I can think, how can we use what we know? We haven't lived in that system for generations, at least 2 now. It is still in our memory. How do we use that to create an economy that makes sense to the least educated amongst us? Because we had no poverty before we had education, and I will leave it there. Thank you.
What a profound connectivity. To take this opportunity, the exoneration of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was referenced. Here among us, the President, Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, Costa Rica, Limon, Costa Rica, where there are a significant population of Afro descendants. And Marcus Garvey lives, the UNIA lives. They have a Liberty Hall that was destroyed recently, that burned down. And so I want to just take a minute, a brief video about the Liberty Hall and this project so that you can be aware of it. So do we have that teed up?
Should we move?
You actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. I'm improvising, so I hadn't really thought about that. I think they want to get, we can do that, and then they want to get a photo op too. So if you can, you may be able to, if you can, yeah, I think you may be able to see it. Okay, well, I don't know. You figure out how, I think you'll be able to see it. Yeah. Okay. So Winston, I'm sorry, I didn't even mention your name. I'm sorry. Winston Norman is here. So Winston. So can you advance it? Can you advance it? Is it already set to just go? Move quickly now, because we're trying to just squeeze some things in here. Give it up for Winston Norman.
That was where Liberty Island was at. Well, this is one of the phrase of our Honorable Marcus Garvey, and that we take for our project also. Rise up, you mighty people, united we stand, divided we fall. To rebuild a dream. We're rebuilding. We ask you for your support for this, the rebuilding of our Liberty Hall in Limon, and the SWIFT code. If you want to help us, would have to go to the bank and take that information, the SWIFT code, everything, so they could reach to our bank accounts that we open especially for this project.
And Winston, here's what we're gonna do from IBW, because we work very closely with the Honorable with Marcus Garvey. Yeah. So we will take this video, we will put it on the IBW site, take the links by which people can also make contributions directly to the project.
Danny Glover was with us at the Liberty Hall the 1st of September
2013. This is a picture he took with Lauder Hall, this is secretary, and Bernong, so which is our treasurer. So that is at the Liberty Hall in Liman. So thank you for your support in advance.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to support this this project, and again, we'll do it by having something on the website. And by the way, I must say I was in Costa Rica this recently, and I was hosted. I had a chance to go to a major ceremony of Afro descendants that they have every year. The current president has claimed his lineage as a Afro descendant as well. So, Vincent, I want to thank you for hosting my wife and I while we were in Costa Rica. Finally, I want to just acknowledge Dr. Dolores Blakely is here with us. Dr. Blakely, would you please stand? Dr. Dolores Blakely is with us. Instructions are to have this evening, when we have our program here, it's nation time for everyone to have the red, black, and green, right? Available. They're not free. They're a modest contribution of $5, but we want a lot of red, black, and green flying right in the hallways. That will also support the cause as well. The IBW, the State of the Black World. See that lovely T-shirt? So let's model that for. Just stand up and let them see that lovely T-shirt on you. Yeah, we got these lovely T-shirts as well, right? Also, we have a remarkable African village out there, a remarkable vending. They have some of the most incredible things out there. So we know that we pay for what we want and beg for what we need, but we know we have resources, so patronize those vendors. Is that Warren Ballantyne back there? Helping to moderate the next session. Warren Ballantyne is in the house. All right, finally, the Chakula cafeteria. Chakula cafeteria is open. We will reconvene in this session and here, this same room. We'll be here all day, including this evening, where we're going to have our opening in Daba. Karinga is here. I just saw him. I think he's just having a little dinner. He's here. A lot of folks are gathering. In Tongolese Sanyiko, who's going to be delivering the major framing discussion this night, is here. So we're off and running. A break now. Give yourself a big round of applause. And we'll see you back here at 1 o'clock. At 1 o'clock, get your lunch at the Chakula cafeteria. And Sister Ifia, let them know where it is, the Chakula cafeteria, so they can get their lunch and be back here promptly at 1 o'clock. Okay, we want to get a Dr. Pryor. We need Deborah. We need you on the stage, and Dr. Pryor, so we get a group photo.